Back to one of our top stories now. Russia has agreed to stop targeting Ukraine's energy sites after that phone call between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump overnight. A little earlier, I caught up with Peter Tesch. He served as Australia's ambassador to Germany between 2009 and 2013, and then to Russia between 2016 and 2019. There is the image of him presenting his credentials when he arrived in 2016. I started by asking Peter Tesch about that phone call between Putin and Trump and if it's being seen as a step forward towards a ceasefire eventually between Russia and Ukraine.
I think it is a step forward in one practical sense, and that is if the Kremlin is willing to commit to ceasing its strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, that's a reprieve for Ukraine. But this is really only a very, very partial concession that the Kremlin is making. And it's not even, I think, an enduring concession. Putin is being very careful, I think, not to provoke Donald Trump into thinking that Moscow will oppose the Trump intentions around peace. But there are no signs that the Kremlin is in any way resiling from its long-held position of the preconditions for a peace, and they amount essentially to the complete subjugation of Ukraine to Moscow's will.
We will get to some of those conditions in a moment, but on the cooperation with Trump, 2-hour phone call, they seem to have a rapport between them, and he's doing enough to ensure that President Trump is not angered by his stance. Is that fair to say?
I think that's correct. The rapport, I think we are told exists, but I'm not sure that either man would fully trust the other based on performance. Nonetheless, Putin is investing, and I think he's seen the cards starting to align from his perspective for the first time in the last 3 years since he began his brutal war of choice.
When he makes a demand, and we get to these preconditions that you talk about, that have been there for years in terms of Russia's view of Ukraine, they don't want foreign interference, they don't want foreign support, intelligence, military or otherwise. That is a pretty big demand, particularly in the face of ongoing aggression from Russia.
It absolutely is, and it really is pretty outrageous. It's like picking a fight in a bar and saying the other party's not allowed to fight back. The reality is the demands go well beyond that. So in the near term, Putin is saying, I want these guarantees before we'll even start to talk about a ceasefire. But in fact, what he's wanted for a long time is a de facto veto over the sovereign future of Ukraine. So at the moment, he's doing the minimum that he feels he must do to keep Donald Trump engaged and not earn the wrath of Washington.
What do you think is the likely outcome now? I know that we're talking about a coalition led by the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, potentially Australian peacekeepers, not large in number, but maybe some troops there as part of a peacekeeping force. But it seems to me, from a lay perspective, you're the expert, I look at that and I think it's a long way off a peace of that sort, is it not? Is it not? How do you read it?
It is a long way off. And while I think those moves by Europe are extremely welcome and very important, especially if the Kremlin feels that if it waits long enough, it will see the United States essentially withdraw from a serious presence in Europe and diminish its support for NATO, which is something that Putin has wanted for a long time. The reality is Putin doesn't want peace in Ukraine, he wants a peace of Ukraine. And while ever the European nations are able to marshal the reserves, that is an important step. We should be encouraging it. We should be supporting it, potentially not, in my view, with troops on the ground, but there are other ways we can be helpful. But it is not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen at a scale which is going to really stay the hand of the Kremlin. Putin wants and needs this war to continue.
And so when you've got that need there, yet the Trump need is a resolution to this thing. He promised it, he campaigned on it. How do these two things square off?
Well, I think so long as Donald Trump feels that Moscow is negotiating and that he can point to success, that he can point to improvements in his eyes beyond what had occurred before, that will keep the Americans engaged. But I don't think this is something, as I said, that Moscow wants to see end any time soon. So the next set of talks will continue and we'll have to see what other drip feed concessions Moscow might be prepared to offer.
And while the drip feed happens, you've got these quite dramatic moves elsewhere in Europe. I know you're also a former ambassador to Germany. Overnight, the Bundestag lifting a debt handbrake, which is a big move. It's in fact a massive expenditure they're talking about in terms of defence and infrastructure. How significant is that in your mind?
I think that's very important. I mean, the problem that we've observed for decades is Germany trying to jump over the shadow of its past, and the fact that constitutionally it has almost been predestined to have untidy coalition governments, which always means compromise. This is a really significant achievement by the incoming Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, and I think it shows a resolve and a will across the German Bundestag, which is a very powerful signal to Europe and also to Moscow.
And a recognition that they're facing a new Europe as well, I guess.
I think there is a recognition that wherever the whole future of NATO lands, Europe does need to step up. And there have been calls for that, not just from Washington, from within Europe. And I think this, tragically, though the motivation is, this is the time for Europe to step up.
Former Ambassador to Russia and Germany, Peter Tesch, thank you for your time and your insights. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.